Grimm is probably the most blisteringly fast opponent we have yet fought. This utter speed demon has 5 completely unique attacks, each one extremely threatening in their own way. Some of them are combos, most of them affect the vast majority of the arena, and he teleports constantly to ensure there's no getting too far away. In a way, he feels almost like a combination of several of our toughest foes, and beating him will require an intimate knowledge of what he's capable of. Specifically, the Fire Dash, the Double Dive, the Fire Bats, Curtain Call, and Firestorm. So let's launch in with the Fire Dash. To begin with, this feels almost like a typical dash and slash maneuver, set apart only by how tall Grimm is. But he will always follow up immediately with his uppercut, which ends in a burst of 5 fireballs. 1 always falls directly beneath him, and 2 on each side arc out to be evenly spaced. Already we're getting into some pretty complex stuff. This is a fight which I almost can't imagine tackling without the Shade Cloak, and this attack is the main reason why. He teleports in so close, he starts this attack so fast, and he's so tall that reliably jumping over the initial dash feels overwhelmingly difficult. Dashing away is always an option, but if you want to get a hit in, you're going to want to stay close. Additionally, this is one of those fights where being in the corner is really uncomfortable, so we're primarily going to try dodging in a way that keeps us centered. So when you see this wind-up animation, dash straight through him. Then don't bother with the headache of trying to dodge the outer flames. You want to be right next to the one that's directly beneath him. So when he dashes upwards, dash to stay with him and stay safely in this zone. This attack also has some unique reactive properties. If, during his wind-up, you get too close, he'll do this little backstep before either winding up again or switching tactics and using fire bats instead. That's kinda weird, but cool too. You get the sense that he wants to keep his distance from you, that he's actually trying to avoid you. The double dive feels pretty similar to the fire dash, only starting high and ending low. He'll dash diagonally towards you from the air and follow up immediately with a second dash along the ground. This is a rare instance of a boss changing their attacks to react to your behavior, and this second dash will always charge in your direction. I recommend dodging the initial dive with a Shade Cloak, once again in his direction, and then jumping pretty much as soon as you can, since you already know that he's going to dash towards you. Of course, a nail pogo here is always a good idea. The fire bats are some of the most involved projectiles we have yet seen. He can begin this attack with a backstep, just like the one he can start the fire dash with, should you be too close to him when he appears. He'll launch 3 bats in a row, all starting roughly at ground level. They can all home in on you vertically, but they can't stop moving in whatever horizontal direction they were launched in, so as soon as you're behind one, it's not a concern. This makes the area generally above their starting point the safest place to be, so once this attack begins, you can take a leisurely double jump over towards Grimm and get in some damage when he's done. If you're thinking that maybe it'd be a good idea to get behind him while he's stuck launching bats, that's some sound logic, but unfortunately Grimm is smarter than that. If you ever get so close to him as to be above or behind him while he's doing this attack, he'll simply teleport away and launch one more bat for good measure. So, if you want to get in some damage, you're gonna have to let him finish first. Additionally, though it's extremely rare that this will ever come up, the column of fire above his arm is also a hitbox. The Curtain Call is an extremely dangerous attack if you let it psych you out. I get it, all these spikes come up from the ground and give you only a second to react. It can feel tempting to just dash and pray you land somewhere safe, but dodging this attack is usually just a matter of taking a single step to the left or right. Don't get fancy, don't panic, just give the knight a single nudge. From here, you have a variety of options. You actually have enough time to heal off a single mask. You could launch a spell at him, but be aware of the kickback. Or, if you're decently close and feeling gutsy, shadow dash through the spikes to get in close enough to land some slashes. Whatever you want to do, I just recommend taking advantage of this window. His final attack, Firestorm, is most likely the attack you'll see him do first, since he always begins the fight by bowing. If you interrupt this bow by striking him, he'll get mad and launch right into this attack. Otherwise, he'll only use it when he reaches certain HP thresholds, 75%, 50%, and 25% specifically. As for the attack itself, I mean, this is the craziest attack we've yet seen, flooding the whole screen with projectiles to dodge. The area directly beneath Grimm is nearly impossible to stand, with fireballs coming too fast and sporadically to reasonably avoid. Things are a little more orderly on the sides of the screen, but no less intense. The fireballs essentially fly along 6 tracks in a series of columns. There's guaranteed to be at least one gap in both the top and bottom halves, so here's my recommendation. Just assume that the top 3 tracks are always dangerous, and only focus on the bottom 3. You'll want to be decently far from Grimm, but with some wiggle room between you and the corner in case you need to back up to dodge a set. Dodging when tracks 1 or 3 are empty is easy. If just track 2 is empty though, well, this is our first instance of something that requires you to do a partial jump since this, way back in our first visit to the Forgotten Crossroads. It's honestly remarkable that we've gotten this far without the game calling on this skill, but now it's time to either learn or burn. Just in case you don't know, cause I know I didn't for a while, a partial jump is something you can do by releasing the jump button before the knight reaches the peak of his jump. Doing a full jump is done by holding the button at least until he starts falling. But by letting go early, you can perform jumps of all different heights. Try tapping the jump button, or trying all sorts of different rhythms to get a feel for it. The bottom row of fireballs requires slightly more than just a tap to clear it. Without partial jumps, you'll be forced to rely on your dash, which is just not reliable. Now, during this attack, or while he's in what everyone seems to call his pufferfish form, he is immune to damage from your nail, but very much not so from spells. You can take advantage of this if you're quick or precise enough, either by releasing an Abyss Shriek when he starts the attack, or launching some Shade Souls from midair when you get a decent gap in the fireballs. Finally, we break down the game plan. I want to talk about his stagger state because it's completely unique. In this state, he has no damaging hitbox, and unlike other staggers, he won't get right back into the fight after being hit. Instead, he'll always stay staggered for a set amount of time. Obviously, this is a great time to heal, since this little hitbox of his can be tough to hit while it's jittering all around. But because of its unique properties, you can actually unload some really decent damage with an Abyss Shriek here. No matter what, just try to take advantage of the downtime. Now, for our plan of attack, Grimm here refers to this fight as a performance, or a dance. And when you get the hang of it, it honestly feels that way. Avoiding attacks isn't so bad if that's all you're focused on, but because he teleports so frequently, getting in your damage requires you to pull off some pretty cool looking maneuvers. There's a lot of ebb and flow, back and forth between attacking and evading. For our part, we want to stay at center stage, and give all of our focus to what position he's in when he appears before each attack. If he's off the ground, you immediately know he's either going to use the double dash or Firestorm. The double dash is best dodged by dashing underneath him, and while that's not the case for Firestorm, it has enough of a windup that if you do dash under it, you have plenty of time to reposition to where you actually want to be. So every time he appears in midair, dash forward. His 3 grounded attacks are all unique, and there's no catch-all technique to dodge them all. You'll have to get by knowing what each specific telegraph indicates. The Fire Dash is the fastest, but also the easiest to differentiate, with his arm and cloak up in this scythe-like form. The Fire Bats have his arm straight out towards you, and the Curtain Call has these pretty tough-to-miss spikes all over the ground. Now, you could do a lot worse than to assume that every time he appears on the ground, he's about to use Fire Dash. As long as your dash isn't spaced so as to land you directly where he's standing, you'll probably be okay, since he'll move away from you if it's the bats, and he himself isn't really a threat during Curtain Call. Even still, I'd say relying on dashing towards him whenever he appears on the ground is a crutch. Lean on it if you have to, but you're better off just trying to recognize the different telegraphs. If you can do that, and get to grips with dodging Firestorm, then you've got this fight in the bag. But man, that just sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? If only there was some way we could just skip all that. If only we could get the reward for beating Grimm without actually, doing the boss fight. If only. That's right. Or we could do it the real man's way. Step 1. Get your charms set up. Obviously you need Grimchild to even start the fight, but beyond that, we're going to be needing Shaman Stone, Spell Twister, and Grub Song. Odds are that you'll still have 2 extra charm notches after that, and you can really put anything you think will help here. I went with Lifeblood Heart for some extra insurance, but Stalwart Shell is also a really good choice. Weaver Song or Fragile Heart can work just as well. Step 2. For even more insurance, take a quick hop up to King's Pass and grab a couple life seeds to really beef up your health. Step 3. Jump on down to the crossroads and farm the easy enemies there for soul until you are full to the brim. Be sure not to sit on the bench on your way back, or you'll have to do Step 2 again. And Step 4. Enter the arena, begin the fight, and trigger his Firestorm attack by hitting him during his bow. From there, stand almost directly underneath him, not quite centered, and unleash Abyss Shriek after Abyss Shriek, pouring in hundreds of damage onto his very large and very stationary hitbox. Since you're doing so much damage, by the time he's done using Firestorm, he should already be at his next HP threshold to use it again, and so on. Obviously, you're going to take a lot of damage, but that's just going to restore soul with Grub Song, and all you need to do is last longer than he does. If you don't take him down before you run out of soul, he'll probably only have about 100 health left, which should be no problem to finish out. So that's less of a dance and more of a screaming match, but let's just call it artistic license. Of course, as we've come to expect, His scaling HP no longer scales, but instead locked at 1,000, which is not bad. A fair bit for sure, but we've done much better. Probably the biggest difference is, of course, the fact that since we can't bring in any soul, he is now impossible to cheese during this phase. But by this point, we have done more than enough practice to not have to rely on that, I should say. Now, something that's kind of interesting about his stagger is that it works a little bit different than I had thought initially. Is that he actually has he doesn't have a maximum amount of time. Well, he does. He has both a maximum amount of time that he can spend staggered and a maximum amount of damage, which is pretty odd. I feel like I've gotten most of my damage just doing Shade Souls here. But now I'm out of soul, and I would like some more, sir. Alright. Thankfully, no remix or major changes here in this fight. I do want to point out that his bow is slightly different. He actually bows towards the Godseeker and not towards us, which is kind of cool. And he's another cool instance as far as his roar goes. Every single boss that we fight in this game has some kind of roar that they start the battle off with. It usually causes us to be immobile. And Grimm here, he has the same thing, but he won't do it if you let him finish his bow. It's just one way where he feels a little bit more civilized than every other boss. Even the most intelligent of them, like the Mantis Lords, do some sort of like big old growl animation to start off the fight. Whoopsies. But honestly, Grimm is not too much trouble for us now, especially not after we've fought his advanced Nightmare King form. And he should be just about finished now. There it is. Now, Radiant Grimm definitely seems like he could be some cause for alarm. But honestly, we're going to be just fine. Never mind. Definitely got a little greedy with the start there. It is more than possible to get 2 Dream Nails on him, which I do want to try and do. But I don't want to trigger that first big ol' pufferfish attack. Because in the grand scheme of things, even though we can get some easy spell damage to start it off, it ends up wasting a little more time than it saves. But there's no avoiding his subsequent 3 ones. But I'm finding it surprisingly easy to get some Shade Souls off in between the mayhem of all those other attacks, which is pretty cool. Wow, that was really fast. Alright. Alright, I think he's done 3 pufferfish now, so he's almost done here. There he is. Okay. Not too bad. Took me a couple tries. We are definitely amping up in difficulty here. An honor, viewer, for you to attend my boss blitz. Of course, if you need a guide on where to find any of the Nightmare Kin, or anything else for that matter, click the playlist on the top left. You should find it in there. Next time, we're taking on Nightmare King Grimm.